This is Amy Chan from CakeDecoratingSchool.com, and if you like cake decorating, you're in the right place. Welcome to our flowers series. In this video, we're going to be piping buttercream floribunda style roses. They're a nice one to build on your skills if you've already practiced basic roses, and the video is broken down into segments, so you can rewind, rewatch, or skip ahead as desired. So for this flower, we're going to make two colors, a little bit of yellow for some centers, some nice little stamens, and the second is going to be a nice vibrant pink that we're going to use for our petals. We're using American style buttercream, and we're going to use 4 liquid gel colors. Some neon bright pink, red, violet, and finally just a little bit of lemon yellow. I'm going to start by making my pink color, so I'm going to use big drops of pink. Just going to start with 4. And I'm going to give it 1 of red. And just a little bit of my purple. And you can either use specks, or I'm just going to do kind of a controlled drop, or at least I'm going to try to if this behaves, just by giving it a little touch there. So I don't have the full drop of purple. And we'll give this a mix around and see what it's like and see if we like it. I don't want it to be too purple or too red. I just want it to be a nice vibrant pink. So I might have enough purple in there. I might just want to up the pink and the red because we're a little more mauve right now for the amount of buttercream that we have. A few more red and a few more of those drops of pink, and that should brighten us up a little bit. And that's coming along beautifully. I think just a little bit more of that pink and we should be good. Gives us a nice, beautiful, vibrant shade of magenta that's going to really deepen up and give us a beautiful color for our roses. So we're going to make a little bit of yellow for our centers. You can see I just have a little dab of frosting in there. And I'm just going to add a tiny bit of that lemon yellow, kind of like half a drop. Just squeeze it and give it a little dab on top. And that's a great way to kind of control the amount if you don't want to use toothpicks, but you're not looking to do a whole drop. But I just want to make a nice little vibrant yellow, something that'll pop against the pink that we made, and I think that's going to be perfect. So let's go over the bags and tips that we're going to use for this flower. We've got 2 of them. They're 12-inch disposable decorating bags, and I have them fitted directly with my tips. First is a number 2 tip on our bag with our yellow, so it can be any small, round, plain tip, whatever you have on hand, 2, 1, or even 3. It'll just make those little stamens either larger or smaller. I like the number 2 for this. And then we have another one that's fitted with one of our larger decorating tips. This is a 123. You can see it's one of those C curved shaped petal tips. And we have our nice bright pink in that one. And those are the 2 bags we're going to use to create this flower. So let's talk about the techniques that we're going to use to make these roses, and they're kind of floribunda inspired roses, so they're going to have some petals that cup in and some that cup out, and we're just going to use a couple of basic techniques with these 2 bags to create them. So first, I wanted them to have stamens in the center because they often have those nice little yellow centers to them, and we're just going to do spikes. So we're going to hold the bag either straight up and down or at a slight angle depending on whether you want them to go straight up or curve off a little bit. And we're going to let that frosting balloon attach into place and then pull up while we're still squeezing. And that's going to give us nice little spikes. So the harder you squeeze, the longer you can make them. So you can really play with the height and their orientation just by pulling the bag different directions, squeezing a little harder or not quite as hard. For our petals, we're going to use our 123 tip. And we're going to do a combination of things. The first is just going to be straight lines, so really just short, straight little petals. right? So just pulling a nice little straight line, which doesn't look like much on our paper. And also we're going to use, right, some soft arcs. So this will all be while we're spinning our flower nail, so it'll give those petals some curve as well. And we're going to use this combination along with turning the bag different ways. So we're going to use it so that it curves in, and also we're going to use it so that it curves out. And we'll go over that when we talk about how we're going to build the blossoms. So those are just the simple techniques, 3 of them, that we're going to use to create these flowers. So let's talk about how we take those techniques and put them together to make our flower. The first thing we're going to do is pipe a mound. So we're going to start out with our 123, hold it straight up down, give it a squeeze, and then we're going to hold it so that it kind of cups over that and just give our nail a spin and a squeeze at the same time. And this is going to give us a nice kind of rounded dome surface area to pipe our petals on. It's also going to give those petals some nice support as well. We're going to follow that up by doing our spikes in the middle. So a lot of times I get a little void. I find that's the perfect place to just pull all those little hairy spikes. It gives me a nice little clump in there. I start with 1 in the middle, go all the way around 1 or 2 times, and just go until I have a nice surface area. We want that little bright pop of yellow in the center of our flower. Next, we're going to take our 123 bag. I'm going to hold it in that kind of classic position, so 45 degrees, back of the bag towards my shoulder. And I'm going to have the tips so that the top is pointing straight up. And I'm going to pull some short little lines with this. And the important part about these short straight lines, and there's usually about 5 or 6 of them, is we're going to make them in an overlapping spiral. So I'm going to pipe 1 and pull it kind of so it angles a little bit out, so I can nest the second one kind of underneath the edge of that, and then pull another one. So you're going to see we're going to pull this kind of overlapping pattern. It's going to give that look like the petals are unfurling, kind of spiraling out from each other. We're then going to take it and move it so that the bottom of that 123 tip is down the side of the mound a little bit, and we're going to pull some of those traditional arc-shaped petals. And this will kind of cup and enclose those center ones. It's going to support them nicely and give us that look like those concave petals in the center of the flower. The next thing we're going to do is going to be a little bit different than what we normally do. So I'm going to take the bag, instead of holding it in my classic position, I'm going to turn it around, and I'm actually going to spin my nail the opposite direction I normally would and pull the opposite direction. So this can sometimes block your view a little bit, so it's a little bit tricky. So if you haven't done a lot of piping in flowers, maybe try a classic rose first, because this is going to be a little tricky. And we're going to start out with it facing kind of straight up and down. It's going to be just a little bit out, maybe towards like 1 o'clock in terms of that angle, just so that the petals are mostly oriented up, but this curves out a little bit, and you can get that back end to connect to your mound. If you try to hold it really straight up and down, you might miss that connection, and we want to make sure that our petals attach. And then we're going to finish it up with a row that's flat against the surface. So we're just going to squeeze in there anywhere we can and get some nice little petals that just curve out and kind of flop over. And this is going to give us the look like some of the petals are going in and some of them are folding out. And it's going to give us a very characteristic look to these roses that's really different and unique from the other ones that we do. So now that we've talked about it a little bit, let's go ahead and pull out our flower nail and give it a practice. So let's get started. We are going to hold this bag straight up and down. We're going to squeeze a nice little mound of frosting. You can see it's kind of rounded. If you want to make sure it's nice and rounded up, just take your tip, fattens right along the surface, and you can really make a nice, beautiful, smooth round that's going to give you a wonderful surface area to pipe these little roses on. I'm just going to clean up my tip from that. So we're ready to go with it. We want to pipe some petals, but the first thing we're going to do is pipe some spikes. So you can see it left me a little void there in the center. I actually like to start down in there, just squeeze my center one and just go all the way around. Want to fill up that area, pull some nice spikes, give them some length, right? Don't be afraid to make them hairy. As you get more on there, they kind of support each other a little bit if you're doing them right next to each other. And if you lose any definition or you need another one, just go ahead and put one on there. And you can see that's going to give us that nice bright pop of yellow in the center. We're going to pick up our bag with our 123 again. We're 45 degrees, back is towards my shoulder, And we're just going to pipe those little straight lines. And I'm just going to pick a spot to bag straight up and down. The fat end of the tip is really just touching the bottom of those little spikes. And we're just going to pipe. Oh, there we go. Short straight lines. Sometimes it's hard to do it slow. That allow us then to nest right in the one before. And you can see it kind of makes a spiraling out pattern. It's almost fan-like. It typically takes me about 5 or 6 to go all the way around. So you can see they kind of look like they're little pages of a book almost kind of flapping open. Next, we're going to keep that bag just right there, almost same position. We're just going to lower it down the side a little bit and pull nice soft arcs. Typically this takes about 4, but it might be more or less depending on how tight you do them. You can always overlap them a little bit, but you can see this kind of encloses that little spiraling center and also adds some stability. As they start to touch each other, they start to give each other some support. I'm just going to clean up the end of my bag because the tips get a little messy when I'm doing this. And I want to prepare myself for the next part. So I've actually turned the bag around. You can see now the opening of the tip is facing towards the camera instead of how it normally would be, where it's away from me. And I'm going to hold it so it's almost straight up and down. I'm just going to angle it a little bit out. I'm going to do what I normally would, start in between 2 petals, and instead of pushing out, I'm going to pull in. So I'm spinning the opposite direction and pulling the opposite direction, meaning that it's going to lay the frosting on the way I need it to, right? So then I'm just going to pull some nice arced petals, as many as you need to. Typically takes me about 4. And you can see now we've got some curving in, some curving out. Now for my last row, just going to clean up my ends if I need to, where I got a little bit of a funny connection if there's a little bit of extra. And I'm just going to slide in, and in between each of those sets of petals, so starting in the middle of one and going to the middle of the next is where I'm going to start pulling. So I'm going to make these kind of like offset patterns. You notice after that first set of 4 petals, the next one are offset in between, and I'm doing the same thing underneath here. So I'm going to start in the middle of one petal, and this one is those straight lines again. We're just kind of gliding along the surface and making these beautiful petals. And if you run into one above it, don't worry, just clean your tip off and kind of let nature take its course. Every once in a while that happens, but sometimes it can make really beautiful effects for you, so don't worry too much. And you can see this makes a beautiful rose for us that looks like it's got a nice closed concave center and nice convex petals outward. And it's a really different style. They're fun to practice. And if you've never made roses before though, we recommend trying the basic rose first and really getting a handle on that and piping those petals on a cone first. But you can see it gives us a really lovely effect with those roses. They're beautiful, they're big, right? And they have lovely, lovely shape and flow to those petals. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like more about the cake decorating materials and equipment we use, or just some inspirational videos about cake decorating itself, you can follow us on Insta or YouTube at Cake Decorating School. If you'd like to know more about yearly membership and what it entails, you can go to www.cakedecoratingschool.com for more information. And if you're interested in these products, you can check the links in the description.